Welcome back, everyone. So we've kind of looked at how TinaCMS works. If you've got a new site and some bit about Next.js, how to optimize that. What is a bit of a black box right now is if we've got an existing site, how do we put TinaCMS on top of that? So that's what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to do some code demos. You can walk along with me, and I'll show you hopefully something that's pretty interesting on how we can make that happen. So we've got a similar tutorial on the Tina documentation website. There's a QR code for it here. And yeah, you can get the same story beats going through that tutorial, but this one is hopefully a bit more exciting. So who am I? My name's Isaac. I'm an SW software developer, and I have been dogfooding Tina the product in developing Tina.io, the SW website, stuff like that. And I really like writing the Tina documentation as well. So moving along, to start this scenario, we've got a new company. It's called WWS, Wizards with Mac OS. That's kind of the idea here, and we want to start promoting it. So we need a product site, and we've decided to use Next.js for that. So here we go. We're going to use this command, npx create next app latest, which is kind of similar to the Tina process where you have your npx command to create the app, but this is just for Next.js. So I'm going to get rid of the slideshow for now so you can follow along with me. Yep. So I've gone to the Next.js site to get this command, and now I'm going over to my terminal so we can run it. So I'm just selecting some basic options here. The app router is pretty important. And we'll just let that install. All right, so here we have our new project, and I'm going to open that up in Cursor so you can have a look at what it comes bundled with. So just to familiarize yourself with the way this kind of app is structured, we've got the source directory and the app router, and that's kind of what's going to handle how our website is generated page by page and the routing. And we've got this page.tsx that contains the React component that's going to be rendered on our home page. So at the moment, this only has one page, and we'll stick to that for the demo. Let's run this application so you can have a look at what that looks like. I've actually got the final version running at the moment. I'm just going to kill that so we can use the normal port numbers. There we go. And if we go to the website, this is what we get. This very basic Next.js, get started with editing, deploy now, all this template content. And yeah, so that's what you would get. And we're just going to delete that and add some hopefully more interesting components. So let's get rid of all of this stuff in main. And save that. Have a look. It's just a blank page. That's perfect. And moving on in the slideshow, we're going to hard code some content. So that's pretty a maintenance nightmare, or it's going to be. And it's eventually what Tina's going to solve. But for now, let's take this approach. Let's pretend we don't want to maintain this very often. Let's just chuck some components in there. And I'm getting these components from Aceternity UI. So that's a ShadCN style UI library that I think is pretty cool. Actually, I've already got them open. So the three components we're going to be using is this shiny text. As you hover, it will highlight. Pretty sick. A sign-up form, just as a bit of example context, and this glare card, which has like a metallic shimmer effect. So we've decided we want these three for our site. It's going to be pretty minimal. Let's add them in. Each of these, if you want to use them in some kind of Next.js site, has a CLI command, an npx command that you can run just to throw all of this in your project really conveniently. So let's do that for these three. So how that kind of works is it's copied across some content and installed a few dependencies for us to make that work. So finish, components, text hover effect. So that's the first one. And now I've got this component that we can just import into our homepage. Let's start with that. Text hover effect. There we go. And yep, cursor will probably suggest putting it in there for us. So let's do that as well. There we go. And let's run that one just to make sure it's all working. Yeah, you can see there the little hello. So I don't know if that's probably very hard to see. Hello as I hover over it. So that's our component, first component, and now let's add these metallic cards as well. So the glare cards, same process. Go over here. We'll use the CLI command. Yep. And throw that into cursor. And let's just do the last one while we're here. So the sign up form. Yep. So that looks good. Hopefully we have components. Yep. The sign up form, the glare card, and the text hover. I'm actually going to go and copy the example code from the Aceternity website for us to use for these, so we don't spend more time writing them. So if we grab this code, and we're really keen to start selling Mac consulting services. So WWS. Let's save that. Let's go back here. Their cards. Copy these guys. Yeah. And finally, let's add this sign up form demo. So this one looks a bit more involved. What I'm actually going to do is throw this into another file, .tsx. Place that in there. Label. Yeah. And throw that into the page. So that looks great. So let's, hopefully this looks kind of presentable now. Client component. Yep, that would make sense. So let's go fix that one. There. Oh, this isn't so good. Now I've got these three, and this looks great. So let's fix the layout of these, and then we can start thinking about our content. So going back to the page. Main. Yeah. Center. Let's see, that's enough. Next line. That. Try that one. There we go. Oh. More issues. Lexicon. Yeah, we still want that. All right, any suggestions from the audience are also welcome. I'm moving this one around. That. I don't believe so. Demo. Four. I think for now, we're just going to throw away the form, since it's causing problems for us. Hopefully that looks a little better. Looks like this guy is now absolutely. Yep. Yeah, let's have a look. Sorry for debugging session in here as well. Sure. So let's go to the above element. Yeah. It's sitting on top of the footer. It's still in main, but it looks like, oh, maybe it is out of main. So let's have a look. Overflow hidden from main. Oh. Yeah, it looks like it is. Good catch. Maybe this needs to be a bit smaller. Right. All right, we're going to take a different approach, get rid of this footer, and just use what we have here. So we have our shiny text and these cards. So this is a bit awkward to edit and get working apparently. This is a bit awkward to edit and get working apparently. And we're also using cursor, and all our content is in this one home, like page.tsx kind of homepage block of code. That's not really ideal. We want to be able to edit this text in here with fine-grained control. And if I'm using something like cursor, it's going to go and rewrite this whole page when I ask for some serious fixes. And this text might not be preserved as I expect. So in cases like this, I think it makes sense to use something like a CMS. So let's use TinaCMS. It has a lot of different starters you can use with a certain npx command. You can find that on our website. And we've also got this npx command that is made for adding Tina into an existing site. But the issue here is that it's not going to wire everything up for us. We have to do that ourselves, but it will install a few dependencies and give us the general framework we need to be running Tina in the app. So let's run that one. Yep. So we'll let that run, and I'll show you what that gives us. gives. 'us. 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 Looks like that's worked. You can see our new shiny Tina folder. We've got this config.ts. This is how Tina's going to control a lot of your important setup steps like the content model and where this is all going when you save something with Tina, the media, where that's being saved in your project. What we're most interested in today is this content model, because that's typically a bit of a pain point. You've got all of this content on your website of various structures, and you need to create a Tina model that's going to match that. And that's how you edit your content. So coming back to the PowerPoint. Yep, that's pretty much what I'm saying. We need this content model. So Tina models content with code. You define the schema that way. I'm going to go through how to create that. So you can see there's an example one that comes with this command, though it's not wired up to anything currently. And that is this post collection. We don't really want to keep this, but we can use it as reference. So let's change the name to home. Yep, label home. And what we need is the title, what's going to come up here, and these cards. So for the title, this looks fine, this bit of data. We do want it there, and we want people to be able to edit it. This is title equals true is something that you set when you want the collection to be labeled a certain way in the editor. So we won't worry about that so much for now. I'm going to remove it. And this rich text body, we don't have a rich text body in this page. I'm going to remove that as well. And yep, let's save this one, run the app again. Initializing, you can see that we've got this new bit of the run command. The TinaCMS dev server is active. And that's basically saying that the local data layer, what controls the data going into our app and being saved to the content folder, is live and something that you can use. Think of it like a little server. So I'm going to go into the app again and show you the content editing experience, but keep in mind nothing's wired up. So this is really from the beginning. So you need to go to the path of your website and then /admin/index.html, and that'll take you here. So this is the visual editing window, but as you can see, nothing's wired up. Let's go home, and yep, this is where we can add a document. There's no documents yet. Let's add one called home WWS. Great, we've got our document. Let's go back here and let's start putting it into our app. So from pages, the page.tsx, we want to import the client. So what is this? The client is basically your GraphQL point of access to make queries to your data. And you can also make queries manually with this, but it comes with some generated code that lets you make a query really easily for the bits of your schema you've already defined. So to give an example for this, for our home, see cursor already knows what I'm going to do. We want to get the data back from this client.queries.home. So if I go down to the config again, we've named this collection, which is just a type of page that we can create, home. And to get one of these pages back, we need to do client.queries.home. And another cool thing here is you can see that Tina has generated all of this type information as well. So you can have some type safety when you're working with this. So we've called our document home. So that's the relative path. That's what we want to be getting. And we're getting the data back. So that's great. Let's just throw that in there. Yeah, data does not exist. Promise await. Yep. That looks fine. Let's save that one. And let's change this to something else. You can see it's trying to go to the visual editor, which we haven't set up yet, but if we edit an admin, we can still access this field. And let's go to the page as well so we can see our updates as they happen. So from this admin editor, let's change it to home from WWS. Refresh this. Now this is home, which hopefully you can see as I hover around it. I've realized now that the contrast with the white on white maybe wasn't the best decision, but committed to it. So there you go. You can see side by side, this is kind of the most basic Tina experience you can get, where you've got the admin editor, and then you've got this like page that's being populated from the content you put into the admin editor. All right, so we've got this, but editing is still a page away. The solution for us is going to be visual editing, and that is going to be a fair bit more setup as well. So keep in mind, it was already a bit of an effort to get to this point, and to get visual editing, it's a little bit more. Once you have done it once or twice, it's not too much trouble, and it's kind of intuitive. So I'm just going to go over the overall process, and then I'll demo that for you. So here we go. First, we need routing and schema. So if we go to our schema at the moment, which is in config.ts, you can see it has, for this specific collection in the UI object, something called router. That's what's going to control when I click on one of these pages from the collections editor. I'll show you that now. That's why when I was trying to click on this, it was taking me to the visual editor, because that routing's set up. So we still do want that. We have no route on our site /demos/blog. We actually just want this to return home route. Hopefully when I click on this, yep, it takes me home. So that's what we hoped would happen. Now we've got our editor window side by side with our homepage after we've set up the router. And this is great, but as you can see, it looks like there's nothing to edit on this page yet. So let's wire that one up. If I go back here to what we need to do, we need this use Tina hook. Hooks are great. They're a client-side React feature. And this use Tina hook creates basically a hydration boundary so that in your editing mode, you can update the values as you edit them in the live editor. But for people who access your site not in the editor window, the data is just populated and static. But you might be thinking, hopefully if you've been listening to Caleb and Wixie's talks, that all of our code is currently server. This is server-side rendered homepage, and this hook needs to be client-side. So this kind of does bring in some complexity. How I like to resolve that one, and I'm going to show you in the demo project so I don't run into any more issues with that, is with this Tina, what I call a Tina client. And it's basically a use client wrapper that lets you fetch your data, and then the data will go through this wrapper, which links it up to the use Tina hook. And then we pass that along to our statically rendered component. So our server rendered component. And that lets us keep most things server rendered and have these little bits of client-side dependent setup in little middleman wrapper functions. So to make this a bit simpler to understand, I've included a graph that kind of shows how that's working. So the top server component is kind of where you would fetch your Tina data up here. And then it would go into this little wrapper, and that would link it up to the use Tina hook, which you're going to need for visual editing. And then that would pass it back into a server component, the server rendered component, which is our homepage. And this is how to keep things server rendered and use visual editing. And rather than demo that, I'm just going to show it. So here we go. From page, our entry point, we're running the query, we're passing it through the client, and then this client is showing us our homepage component. So this home component, and you can see that here. So this is basically an exact copy of what we had in our little demo app, all in page. So I've abstracted that one step away to get visual editing. And that's cool. So I'll show you what that looks like in the pre-prepared demo app. I go to this one. Need to swap over. Give me a second. Docs, dev, there we go. Right. WWS, a few cards. And more importantly, when we open up the visual editor, we get this. So finally, we have our little editing window there that's linked up to the right page. And just to reiterate, that's being done through this Tina client, which is a client-side component wedged between two server-side components, the one that's fetching our data and the component that's going to render our data. So that's kind of the design pattern we've used there. And then the last thing we need to link up is this Tina field and data Tina field attribute. So these two give us our click to edit functionality. So we've got visual editing working. This is totally optional, but you can extend it even further to have this cool click to edit functionality that'll take you to the exact field you want to edit. So there's a URL from an image there, color for an SVG card. So yeah, let's go into how to do that one. We've done a similar thing to the Tina client, where I've created another component that I can pass, that I can wrap my content with to assign it as something that is going to link to a certain field. And the way I have done that is by passing in the data. So the data I get back from my query into my Tina click client, along with the label that we've given to that title in the config. If we go to the config here, we've named everything. So you want to specify that name for your Tina field function, along with the data that it exists in. Yeah, so that's kind of how that would work. And then you can click on something and it'll take you exactly there. This code will all be available in the repo that I've uploaded it to, like Lombard SW/my docs. So if you want to look at it yourself a bit more slowly, you're welcome to go there, look into it. So I've got one final thing for you and on this adventure, and that is what we call blocks. And that's turning Tina from just a basic structured editor into a fully fledged website builder. So it's something where you have a number of page sections and you can add them as blocks and drag them around and basically build your website completely modularly. And that's using a few pieces of kind of Tina tooling. The key one is called templates. So if I go down to the config in this example, you can see we have defined on our home content model this object called blocks. And we've said it's going to be a list and that it's going to take in a set of templates. So of those templates, we've got the two that we imported earlier, the text and these cards. So this one, the text, you want to give it a name and label and the set of fields that it's going to contain. And for the cards, it's the same deal. You want to give it a name and label and then a set of fields that it's going to contain. Let's go back to our website and I'll show you what that will look like once you've linked it up. So we've got the blocks here. You add one of the two, those two templates that I just showed you, the text or the cards. Let's add some text. Nothing's there yet, but if we add some, some text there, you can see it has appeared white on white again. So that's kind of the block-based editing scenario. And you may be thinking, how do we get that? Like, how are we recognizing which block has been chosen to go on that place in the page? And that's simply with switch case blocks. So if we go to our home object, we've mapped out the array of templates and we're checking what type they are. So each one has a type name that Tina actually generates on the fly based on your schema, so how you've defined this collection. And we can check that to see what template has been selected. So you can see I've got home blocks text and home blocks cards. The text and cards at the end corresponds to the specific template you've chosen. And then in each case following that, we're just rendering those out. So in this example, I've gone a step further, and these cards actually contain some templates as well. And that's how I have created this image version of a card, this SVG version of a card, and this text-on-text version of a card. Yeah, so that's kind of the Tina, the end goal of all this content modeling for a static website. There's another approach you can take, which is just having big blocks of markdown. So you want to do that for something like docs, where you've just hard-coded the template and you've got maybe a title and all this markdown that's really flexible for your docs content, but then you lose some of the flexibility of having these really cool components you can pull from something like Aceternity, like the cards. So I've got a little video in case the demo didn't work for me. And that's just what I just showed. Yeah, so that's pretty much the end of my talk. Once again, you can find the demo code at this repo. I was like Lombard SSW/mydocs, and that's it from me. Does anyone have any questions? No. All right.
Which bits do you wish were more automatic?
I think the visual editing that you need to kind of set up these 3 different points to make it work as you'd expect is a little bit painful.
Right, so at which point do you wish it was set up?
That's a really good question, because we've kind of taken the approach where users can define their app however they want, as long as they know how to link those 3 parts up. And that gives you a lot of flexibility on how you've implemented your application, but then you need to fill in all these Tina links to set it up correctly. Whereas if it was more templated, we would have some knowledge of how the user is going to implement the app and we could predict where these things should go, but it's just not. We've traded flexibility for some convenience there.
Then it's also quite either started by yeah.
Yeah. So the reason we've kind of gone with this sandwiching thing is because for the visual editing, it needs to happen client side because you're changing the data depending on, what the user's doing. But we still want the power of these server-side components. We don't want to be rendering it all client-side and that wait to be on the client's machine. So it is kind of a hybrid setup where we're doing this sandwiching thing. And that's something that Next 13, I think, from the app router, it's kind of become a possibility. So before that, once you went to client land, I think you were stuck there.
So that right. So
Yeah, that's the idea, effectively. All right, cool.
very yeah, sort of by that I have when I played it to let it work. I went to it.
Yeah, that's the idea. They use Tina hook kind of operates like a use state. You could think of it like that. So it's just going to fire off once and hopefully have a static state. All right, if there's no more questions, thank you for coming along this journey with me. Hopefully it's interesting.